All right, today we're going to crack open a 2,000-year-old legal mystery. And get this, it was a riddle so tricky, it had two of the greatest minds of the time going head to head. It's one of those puzzles that, when you first hear it, it doesn't seem to make any sense. So what's it all about? Well, the whole thing really boils down to this one simple but kind of profound question. Can you make something that's already sacred even more sacred? Like, can you take an object that's got this holy status and just stack another totally different holy status right on top of it? Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to understand the two specific kinds of holy money we're talking about here. This is all happening back in ancient Jerusalem, and these details are key. First up, we've got something called second-tithe money. So picture this. You're a farmer, way back when. You have to set aside 10% of your harvest, right? Then you sell it for cash. But here's the catch. You have to spend that specific money on food when you go on pilgrimage to Jerusalem. So you see, it's not just normal cash. It's money with a very specific, sacred job to do. And the second piece of the puzzle? The peace offering. This was a special kind of sacrifice people would bring to the temple, maybe to say thanks or for a celebration. And once you designated that animal for the offering, boom, the animal itself became sacred. Okay, and right here, this is where our puzzle really snaps into focus. What in the world happens if someone takes their sacred second tithe money, the Jerusalem food money, and says, I'm using this money to buy a peace offering? Does that cash, which is already holy in one way, suddenly get this whole other layer of holiness slapped on top? You'd think there'd be a simple answer, right? Nope. On this exact question, two of the most brilliant sages had totally, completely opposite answers. And that, my friends, is where our mystery really begins. And I mean, their answers could not be more black and white. On one side, you have Rabbi Yoḥanan, and he's like, yes, absolutely, the money now has both kinds of sacredness. But on the other side, Rabbi Elazar gives a hard no. He says the whole attempt just fails. The money is still just second-tithe money, and that's it. So Rabbi Yoḥanan's take seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? In his mind, the two types of holiness can just exist together. You just add the new status on top of the old one. Easy peasy. But then you have Rabbi Elazar, who's just as certain, saying, no way, it's impossible. So now we've got this head-on collision between two brilliant thinkers. This tells you it's not just a simple disagreement, right? There has to be some deeper fundamental principle going on here. And this is where things get really interesting, because this isn't some random argument. To actually solve this thing, we've got to grab a shovel and dig a little deeper. We need to find the hidden idea that's really driving this whole debate. And it turns out, the argument about the peace offerings, well, that's not even the real argument. It's just a symptom of a much older, much more fundamental disagreement. See, the real key to this whole puzzle has nothing to do with peace offerings. It all comes down to how you define that second tithe money to begin with. Like, what is it, fundamentally? Is it God's property, or is it still your property, but just with a bunch of rules attached? So there were basically two big schools of thought on this. First, Rabbi Meir. He saw the money as property of the Most High. A really good way to think about this is like a sacred trust fund. It's technically God's money, and you're just the manager. But then you have Rabbi Yehuda. He saw it as non-sacred property. This is more like a gift card with really strict rules. The money is yours, but there's a catch. You can only use it in Jerusalem, and only for food. Okay, so here's how this all snaps together. If you go with the gift card idea from Rabbi Yehuda, there's no debate at all. Of course you can add a secret status to your own money. The real fight, the one we started with, is happening entirely within the trust fund view. Rabbi Elazar says no because, well, how can you dedicate something that already belongs to God? You can't. But Rabbi Yoḥanan thinks, there's a loophole. He argues that since both types of holiness are connected to the temple, you can make an exception. So it seems like we've got it all figured out, right? A nice, consistent, logical framework. But then, a wrench gets thrown into the works. An ancient text is brought into the mix. A piece of evidence that looks like it's about to completely blow Rabbi Elazar's whole argument out of the water. This text is called a baraita, and it describes a situation that seems to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you can stack both kinds of holiness on the same money. I mean, this looks like a total knockout punch to Rabbi Elazar's entire position. And the text gets super specific. It's talking about what happens if you want to redeem this money, and it mentions a penalty. But not just one penalty. It says there are two penalties, one for the peace offering part and another one for the second-tithe part. 2/5, two separate penalties. You see? This little detail is basically the smoking gun. It's screaming that there were two different kinds of holiness on that money, and each one needed its own separate penalty to be redeemed. So you gotta ask, right? If this ancient text is talking about paying two penalties, that has to mean two types of holiness were living on the same money. So how on earth can Rabbi Elazar still say it's impossible? Do we just find a massive, unsolvable contradiction? And this is where the last beautiful, elegant piece of the puzzle just clicks into place. Because that big contradiction, it's not a contradiction at all. We just forgot to ask one single crucial question. Okay, let's walk through this. That piece of evidence, the baraita, that seems to blow everything up, it's not some universal truth. It's a text written from a very specific point of view. Whose view? Rabbi Yehuda's, the gift card guy. And from his perspective, yeah, of course you can stack holiness on your own money. But remember, Rabbi Elazar's entire argument is built on the opposite idea, Rabbi Meir's sacred trust fund idea. So this baraita is completely irrelevant to his point. It's like someone trying to use the rules of basketball to argue a call in a soccer game. They're just not playing the same game. And just like that, poof, the contradiction is gone. It just evaporates. That ancient text doesn't disprove Rabbi Elazar at all. It's just operating in a completely different logical system, built on a totally different foundation. Each side's argument is perfectly consistent, as long as you stay within their own rules. The puzzle is solved. So, what do we take away from this whole ancient brain teaser? Well, a few things. First, if you really want to understand an argument, you have to find the hidden assumption it's standing on. You know, the whole trust fund versus gift card thing. Second, a piece of evidence, a gotcha moment, only works if it's playing by the same rules. And finally, and I think this is the coolest part, sometimes what looks like a glaring contradiction is really just two perfectly logical systems that happen to be sitting side by side. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about, doesn't it? This whole ancient puzzle, this exercise in pure logic, really pushes us to ask a very modern question. What are the hidden assumptions we're all working with today? What are the Rabbi Meir versus Rabbi Yehuda debates of our time that are quietly, invisibly shaping the rules and the arguments that run our world?